Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or indeed good evening, depending on when you are watching. I'm James Innes, the Jobs Guru, and today I'll be talking about how to handle a job offer. This is now episode 81 of my YouTube show. In most episodes, I normally give advice on how to get a job, CV writing tips, how to tackle different interview questions, cover letters, ATS, or I talk about the week's workplace, jobs, careers and employment news, which in the past 6 months has largely been about the terrible situation we find ourselves in and all the swathes of redundancies. Or in other episodes, I take questions from my viewers. But I don't think I've yet said anything about getting an offer of a new job and how to handle that. So that's what we're going to focus on today. Now, whilst in many cases an employer might make you a straightforward offer and you will be able to accept it without question, there will be occasions when you may wish to negotiate the precise details of their offer. If you're unprepared, this can be a tricky stage to handle. However, if you've done your research and thought things through, your end goal is now very much in sight. In most cases, your salary will be the most important item on your list, but you mustn't lose sight of various other factors which together constitute the whole package. Depending on the nature of these extras, they could make a relatively basic salary appear a whole lot more attractive. There could be many factors you need to take into account besides just your salary. Cash, bonuses, profit share, commission, overtime, staff discounts, time, holiday allowance, time off in lieu, sickness, sick pay, company car allowance, car insurance, training opportunities, training allowance, medical benefits, private health insurance, dental plan, health club membership, pension plans, pension contributions, childcare, share options, and termination clauses, notice period, garden leave, non-compete clauses. That can be particularly important in some cases. You should also take into account the effect this job is going to have on your CV. If it's going to help you develop in ways which will be of significant value to you in your next job and will therefore boost your next salary package, then you may be prepared to accept a lower offer in order to secure the job, maybe even lower than your current salary. Thumbs up if you agree with that strategy. The very first step you should take, and should actually have taken a long time before a formal offer comes your way, is to research the kind of package usually offered for this type of position. To put it another way, you need to establish what your market value is. It is vital for you to have a realistic idea of what you are likely to be worth to the employer, and you should really have this before you even start looking for jobs. If you're working with a recruitment consultancy, then they can normally help you with this. However, there's plenty of information to be gleaned through looking at other job adverts and researching online. Once you've established a range for your market value, you need to decide what is the minimum that you would be prepared to accept, assuming the job is suitably attractive, and what is the maximum you can reasonably expect to achieve without breaking the deal. Only you can decide what the minimum is that you would be prepared to accept, but your research should make it clear what the maximum is that you're likely to achieve. Whilst you'll need to be specific as to your requirements, it's important, with a few exceptions, sales and other money-driven and largely commission-based roles, to convey the impression that money is not the only deciding factor in your choice for a new job and indeed a new employer. Instead, your emphasis should be on politely but firmly conveying that you are aware of your market value and that you feel it is only appropriate that you should be remunerated accordingly. In most cases, your prospective employer will make the first move and tell you what they are prepared to offer. This has both advantages and disadvantages. The main advantage is that they have shown their hand and you now know how close or far from your own expectations their expectations are. The main disadvantage is that if their offer isn't sufficient, then the onus is clearly on you to make the next move. If an employer makes no specific offer but asks you to name your price, then they're certainly putting you on the spot. Your approach should be to try to identify whether or not they at least have a salary range in mind. An employer will normally have a range, but if challenged to reveal it, they will probably err on the side of caution. So don't be immediately disappointed if your salary expectations exceed the range quoted. Regardless of how the negotiations kick off, you should be aiming to pitch for a salary at the top end of the range and constantly be prepared to negotiate and reduce that figure as necessary in order to reach a compromise. This is a standard haggling technique. Start high and be prepared to come down. The most important bargaining strategy at your disposal is to play this employer off against others. Politely point out that you have applications in progress for other roles where the packages offered are more in line with your requirements, and that you would naturally expect this employer to be able to at least match these offers, if not improve upon them. Whether or not you have firm offers from anyone else is to a degree besides the point. The point is to reiterate your market value to the employer and to establish that you entirely reasonably expect to receive what you're worth. If you're unable to adopt this strategy, then your next best strategy is to come clean and state the market research you have undertaken, give the employer the salary range you have identified, and then make your case as to why you feel the high end of that scale best reflects your worth. If you've reached this stage, then you've clearly already made a strong case at interview, and the employer now wants you. This is to your advantage. However, you may still need to make a final pitch to secure the level of salary you desire. Once you've both got your cards on the table, a discussion may follow, and it may take compromises on both your parts in order to finally reach agreement. There are so many ways in which this conversation may then unfold that it's impossible for me to provide you with a precise winning formula. For a start, you may be negotiating in person or via a recruitment consultant, by telephone or in writing, but whatever happens, keep your cool and maintain a professional detachment. Don't let the discussions become at all heated. Demonstrate to the employer that you are willing to work with them to reach a mutually beneficial agreement. The confident manner in which you handle the negotiations may be sufficient grounds alone for the employer to feel you warrant more than their original offer. There's normally nothing to be lost in attempting to negotiate a higher salary than the employer originally offers. Provided you handle proceedings in a diplomatic fashion, the worst possible outcome is likely to be that the employer sticks to their guns and refuses to contemplate a higher offer. However, having come this far, recruiting is an expensive process, I can tell you. Most employers will usually display at least a little flexibility. If they do refuse to budge, then it's up to you to decide whether or not their offer is sufficient or whether you will have to reject it. Be warned that if you do flat out reject their offer, the chance of their increasing it at this stage will not be high. Avoid playing brinkmanship. Another possible downside to negotiating is that feeling they might have initially paid over the odds for you, an employer might be rather ungenerous when it comes to reviewing your salary in the future. However, I think a bird in the hand is definitely worth two in the bush, and if an employer fails to give you the pay rises you deserve later down the line, then you can always look elsewhere later, can't you? What do you think, viewer? Let me have your thoughts in the comments section below. Once the employer's made their final offer, you're under no obligation to accept it on the spot. It's entirely acceptable and definitely recommended to at least sleep on it. Such a major decision requires careful consideration, and most employers will respect you for taking a little time to think it over. And another reason for taking at least 24 hours to consider an offer is it will give you a chance to use this offer to influence others you may have received. If you've worked hard in your job hunt, then it's not unusual to get to a position where you are confronted with multiple offers. Maybe not so much at the moment, a fairly saturated job market, but hopefully things are improving slowly. Now, whilst there are obvious risks involved, you can attempt to play them off against each other so as to achieve an even stronger offer. Anyway, once you've reached final agreement, it's absolutely essential to get the offer in writing. This should confirm the precise details of the package being offered, and it's vital to have this in hand before you contemplate resigning from your current position. I can't stress enough how important this is. A verbal offer can just be withdrawn at any time, and you could find yourself in a very difficult position. It's worth noting that in the UK, as in many other countries, there is no legal requirement for a written contract of employment. A contract is deemed to exist the moment you accept a job offer. However, an employer is still required to give you, normally within 2 months of your start date, what is known as a written statement of employment particulars, detailing certain key terms of your employment. Whilst a written offer on the employer's part is normally legally binding, it is common practice for it to be subject to suitable and satisfactory references. Indeed, some employers will withhold making an offer of employment until they have finished obtaining references. Of course, not all employers will bother with this formality, with people being increasingly worried for legal reasons about giving anyone a bad reference. The whole references game can often seem a fairly pointless exercise, and it has of course been known for an individual's current employer to give them a glowing reference just because they're keen for them to leave. Nevertheless, many employers will still pursue references, and in certain lines of work they can take the issue of references very seriously indeed. Naturally, you need to choose carefully. Their comments could have a significant impact on your future. Traditionally, you're expected to be able to provide details of at least 2 referees, usually one personal, often perhaps a former teacher or lecturer in many cases, and one professional, which is usually your current or previous employer. However, it's not unheard of for an employer to want to check not only with your current employer, but also with your previous employer, and maybe even your employer before that. It all depends on how thorough they want to be and how sensitive a role it is that you're being recruited for. Whilst you could just dish out name and contact details and requests, it is much better etiquette to actually contact your potential referees before releasing their details. Generally, it doesn't hurt to start getting in touch with potential referees early. This also gives them a chance to prepare what they'll say about you and gives you a chance to decide if they really are the best choice. Depending on your relationship with your referee, you may find it quickest and easiest just to pick up the phone. However, in most cases, a brief but courteous little email or even a letter will be appreciated. Very occasionally, you may be expected to secure a formal written reference yourself, but in the vast majority of cases, all you need to do is obtain permission to release your referee's contact details to any interested parties. It's then up to your prospective employer to decide how they wish to proceed. So there you go, the key points today. Whilst you may be inclined to accept an offer without question, there will be occasions when you may wish to negotiate the precise details. What is the minimum that you would be prepared to accept, assuming the job is suitably attractive? What is the maximum you can reasonably expect to achieve without breaking the deal? When negotiating, your emphasis should be on politely but firmly conveying that you are aware of your value. The employer needs to understand that you feel it is only appropriate that you should be remunerated according to your value. Aim to pitch for a salary at the top end of the range. Start high and be prepared to come down as necessary. Demonstrate to the employer that you are willing to work with them to reach a mutually beneficial agreement. Remember that a verbal offer can be withdrawn at any time, so it's absolutely essential to get their offer in writing. Most offers of employment will be subject to your prospective employer being able to obtain satisfactory references. Naturally, you need to choose your referees carefully. And finally, you should always actually contact your potential referees before releasing their details. Thank you for watching today. Keep safe and be well, my friends. Goodbye.